Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. My name is Tom Tobin, president of the club, and we're thrilled to have you join us today. This meeting broadcast is available on HCTV as well as our Rotary of Hudson YouTube channel. Our club meets weekly at Laurel Lake for breakfast on Wednesday mornings from 7:15 to 8:30. Come out and join us for a meeting. We would love to have you as a guest. To learn more about Rotary, our club, and the impact we're having on our local community and the world, visit our website, rotaryhudson.org. Enjoy the meeting today and help us share the message that Rotary connects the world.
Welcome to Rotary Club on behalf of Ron Strobel and Tom Tobin. And there's two famous people that that had birthdays on this day, January 8th. One of them would be my father. He'd be 86 today if he was alive. So happy birthday, Dick. And the other one was Elvis Presley. So
The King.
The King.
Which one was your father?
There was. Oh, I guess only my mother would know. But there was the King, and there was Burger King, which was my dad. So anyway, I'm filling in for Ron, and basically we're going to start out. I'm also filling in for Jim Ahern because he was going to do the prayer Jim Young said Jim Ahern was going to do the prayer, right? Okay. So I'm filling in for Jim Ahern. So let's bow our heads and Lord God, let us ask for peace. Let us ask for love. Love thy neighbor, as it says in the Bible. And let us hope that our president and our government makes the proper decisions through patience and actually turning to you, Lord, for the proper advice on what to do with the situation with Iran and those countries. And we pray for our local government officials and our statewide government officials. And we pray that they keep the people in their minds and their hearts when they make the decisions they have to make. And I know they're tough decisions. In your great and powerful name we pray. Amen. Next, I'd like to call Tom, who is doing the Pledge Allegiance. Bill, would you lead us in Pledge Allegiance? And then also, is he going to do the four-way test?
Yes.
Okay.
Please join me in the Pledge Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the four-way test. First, is it truth? Second,
Is it fair to all concerned?
third,
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
and fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, and welcome as a new member to our club here in 2020. And now we have the piano man. He's going to come in here and lead us in song. Is it Rocket Man or Piano Man?
My name is Chris. Thank you. I have something special for you today for the music. You're not asked to sing, but you're asked to listen to it. It's a 7-year-old that sings the national anthem like you've never seen it before. James, please. Can you see there? Turn up the volume as much as you can. Can you bring it up, Jim?
Stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. Oh, the ramparts we won.
what were you doing when you were 7 years old?
Tom was still in the crib. Phil, thank you for sharing that with us. That was fabulous. I mean, that really touches your heart. There's passion in that child. I'm sure she's going to go a long ways. And next we have, speaking of Chris Barker, up at 5:45 this morning, ready to go.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests. I would like to introduce a few guests that are here with us. If they could please stand so we can give them a warm Rotary welcome. We have Barb McAdoo. She is a guest of Mimi Becker's and lives right here at the beautiful Laurel Lake. Thanks for joining us. And then we have the very, very sweet, the very nice and fun Terry Bortnick. Jim Lang and I are both claiming her as a guest, okay? So thank you everyone for joining us today.
Oh, Chris, you forgot one more. We have Andy Morse.
I've got perfect attendance for the year.
Okay. With all that being said, I'd like to introduce our president, Tom Tobin, to the club.
Thank you, sir. Good job. Thank you, everyone. I promise I won't growl like that little girl did on. That was awesome. That was amazing. Thanks for bringing that to us, Dad. Okay. Happy New Year, everyone. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season. We haven't been together in, 3 weeks now? It's been a while. I hope you all have been a lot more productive than I have. I've watched a lot of Netflix and, a lot of binge watching. And my wife hasn't beaten me up too much about it yet. All right, well, let's see. The first thing on the agenda, left over from last year, the fall fundraiser. I wonder if I might have Tom Page come up and give us a little report on that.
Just the leftover, huh? Yes, we finished. Any feedback on the roses?
They were good.
They did last a long
They cost more, and that hit the profits. But I'm glad to hit the. We ended up with about $5,400, so a little less than I was hoping for. But in years past, we'd be happy as can be. So we got a good start for the foundation for our projects for this year, and I want to thank everybody for all their help and all their generosity. And Liz, thank you very much. Jimmy Ahern, he's not here, but no questions, I'm out of here.
That's great. Tom, thank you so much for your leadership on that. I know it's a lot of work, a lot of anxiousness and frustration associated with making sure we get everything, all the flowers and popcorn in on time and delivered to where it needs to be, and you did a great job. We appreciate it. Let's see, and thank you all for participating in it as well, including the service learning class. So, yeah. By the way, we have a new representative of the service learning class helping us out with audio visual this morning. Tell me your name again. I apologize. Evan. Evan, what's your last name? Nip? Evan Nip from the service learning class. Thank you so much for helping us out. It makes a big difference. Okay, let's see. I just have, I don't have a lot of things to say this morning. I did want to point out, though, one thing I noticed as I was walking through the halls here at Laurel Lake, that Claire Truesdale passed away just a few days ago. Claire, I think many of you know, Claire was the first director of Hudson EMS, and she helped get it organized. She ran it for many years. She was a tireless advocate for volunteerism within EMS and really helped build that into a substantial and credible organization that served many people in our community and did a lot of good over time and continues to do good now. So, I didn't know Claire that well. I think I might have met her a couple times at some social, but I always knew who she was, and I always knew how much people respected her for her volunteerism and service. And I think she's the kind of person that we in Rotary should honor and respect. So I just wanted to call attention to her departure. Okay.
Tom?
Yes, James.
Quick thing.
Please.
Okay, so you're seeing a picture of the new middle school. You can see it's the rear of the new middle school. We're going to have to ask Noreen if they can have a shot from the front of the middle school.
Sure, sure.
No, but it's actually pretty neat. That where you see that those large, looks like boards, those are boards, those will be windows into the lunchroom area.
That's right.
So actually the back of the building is very nice looking as well as the front. So what I wanted to point out though was that the 1927 building, we're still looking for ways to preserve that. So we've had a committee of people from the Heritage Association and so forth, city and so forth, have come up with lots of ideas. We've put together a whole packet that is going out to developers who might be interested in developing, doing that. Obviously, they would have to preserve the envelope of the building, and the use would have to conform to the neighborhood. There was an article in the paper, or a full-page ad in the Hub. So any of you who may have connections to someone with megabucks or awning companies or something, yeah, but someone who may be, so we're also just reaching out because Hudson's a pretty connected town. If you know anyone who is a developer and I've actually contacted someone I knew who may be interested, we have all the information and background and to try and facilitate that process. What's interesting is a lot of people, when we announced it, came to us with a bunch of ideas of what could be done with it, which is really nice and interesting. But at this point, we actually need someone coming not only with an idea, but the financial backing to make that happen. So if you do know anyone or you know someone who knows someone, please pass that on.
This is where Rotary can play a role. I mean, our members may know people out there who would be interested in developing this property, and this is the time to speak up about that. Rich, yes, please. The new middle school will be ready for the beginning of this fall, this upcoming fall. So not 9-10 months from now, yeah, something like that. By the way, is that 7 months? Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, I guess you're right. Is it okay? A week later. That accounts for me being off by 3 months. By the way, I do want to report on one thing that I think, one additional thing related to the schools. My understanding is the Ada Cooper Miller Natatorium is now open and is being used by our swim programs, our students, our swim team, and that's great news. I haven't seen the final result yet, but I think if you get a chance, stop by there. That's at the Ada Cooper Miller Natatorium is attached to Eastwood's school, and it turned out great. And fortunately, we got it done on time. So, all right. I think at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Evan to introduce our speakers today.
Thank you, President Tom. And before I do that, just one thing that I wanted to mention. Let's put our hands together this morning. Our president is about halfway through his year, and Tom has stepped up and continues to grow and do a great job leading our club. So I want to recognize him for his halfway point. And Marilyn's hard at work getting ready right now. So what do we have going on in January at Rotary? Well, January is vocational service, excuse me. January is vocational service month at Rotary International, so we're going to do the same here in Hudson. Vocational service is at the heart of Rotary, which was founded on the classification system of membership. Business and professional life are the bedrock of Rotary, and vocational service is a major force in promoting honor, integrity, and trustworthiness in business. Originally, one representative from each business or profession was invited to join a club. A little bit's changed since then. Paul Harris felt that if several members of the same profession were to join, they would either sit together and talk shop or compete against each other for other members' business. The idea of trade boosting was gradually eliminated, and by 1912, Rotarians were no longer required to exchange business with one another. Interesting. That was a requirement when getting started. So a little bit more. The Rotarian Code of Conduct. As a Rotarian, I will act with integrity and high ethical standards in my personal and professional life, deal fairly with others, and treat them with their occupations with respect. Number 3, use my professional skills through Rotary to mentor young people, help those with special needs, and improve people's quality of life in my community and the world. Number 4, avoid behavior that reflects adversely on Rotary or other Rotarians. So vocational service is super important. As Rotarians, we have the opportunity to do a lot as a group activities, but vocational service is more for us to go out into the world as individuals and really represent Rotary. So this month we have a number of awesome Rotarians, fellow Rotarians, that are going to be speaking with us about their professions and their vocational service. And today, to kick us off, we have 2 awesome members, Elizabeth Kwolek and Patrick Shearer, who will be sharing a little bit more about their story and their vocations. So what we're going to do today, we're going to give them each roughly 10 minutes, 8 to 12 minutes or so, to share anything they'd like about the impact that Rotary's had on their business and vice versa. So we'll do that, and then we'll open up the floor to kind of a panel-style question and answer at the end. And to kick us off, Elizabeth Kwolek is going to start. Elizabeth has been a Rotarian here in Hudson for about 4.5 years. She's jumped in and now serving on the board of directors. So we're really thankful to have her at Rotary. And I'm going to read just a short bio about Elizabeth and then call her forward. Elizabeth Kwolek is the MCTV Sales and Marketing Director. In this role, she is responsible for the development of large-scale strategic planning, sales advancement, as well as the implementation of the company's marketing and public relations initiatives. Her primary responsibilities involve strategizing traditional and digital marketing campaigns while supervising the implementation of integrated branding, advertising, public relations, social media, and sales tactics. Additionally, she oversees MCTV's commercial sales department and Safeguard Home Security Division. Prior to her current position, she was the marketing manager for MCTV, and she has been with the company since 2016. Kwolek is a member of PRSA, Rotary International, and the Association of Junior League International. Prior to joining MCTV, she was the Director of Public Relations and Research for a Cleveland-based marketing and PR agency and served as Senior Director Producer in the Marketing Department of West Virginia University Hospitals. She has led key accounts including Joann Fabric and Craft Stores, Big Lots, CarMax, and Kent State University to win national marketing and public relations awards, including Bulldog and Digiday Awards. Kwolek has been recognized as one of CableFax's 2017 Overachievers Under 30. Prior to working in marketing and public relations, she started her career as a television news producer in mid to large-size markets. Kwolek earned her undergraduate degree from the E.W. Scripps School of Journalism at Ohio University and a master's degree from West Virginia University. She has earned a certificate in integrated communication through PRSA. Her research studying the effect of vulnerable and grandiose narcissism on social media privacy control is published in Computers in Human Behavior and has been honored both globally and nationally at conferences for the American Academy of Advertising. The research was also selected as a Human Communication and Technology top paper by the American Communication Association. Without further ado, I'd like to call up our fellow Rotarian, Elizabeth Kwolek.
Okay, so I have my timer, so I'm only going to do 10 minutes. I haven't done a 10-minute talk for a long time, so just yell at me. No, we're good. Nobody wants to hear that much. Although I said this is good prep. I have a kindergartner, and I'm going to be doing the career fair for the first graders and kindergartners. And I was like, what do I tell them that's interesting? So thank you, Evan, and good morning, Rotarians. So as Evan had said, I am the sales and marketing director for MCTV, a telecommunications company. But I would be amiss when Evan asked me to speak. I was thinking, oh, well, I could talk about my career. I've talked about it a million times to people. But I would actually say that I have 2 full-time jobs, which makes me have 2 vocations as well. One of them, which is the most meaningful to me, is being a mother. And the other one is being in marketing and public relations in the telecommunications industry. So we'll start with the one that means the most to my heart, is being a mother. I have 2 children, Christian, who's 6 years old, and Grayson, who today is 15 weeks old. Because, you have to start everything with something that's really cute, and they are way cuter than me up here. Anyway, so the other one who's not as cute, but my husband, Nick. So actually, my husband and I grew up in Canfield, Ohio, Northeast Ohio, about 45 minutes east of here. We actually grew up, we met in church, played soccer together since elementary school, but everyone always asks, were you high school sweethearts? We were not. He dated my best friend through high school. We were just best friends. But he really leads into where I got to today with my current vocation, because that story kind of all intertwines. So I'm not going to go through this for very long. Evan kind of did a whole recap. Sorry, I didn't realize he was going to read that long bio. I went to Ohio University. I studied journalism. My main focus was to go into broadcast news journalism. I was a television news producer for several years. I worked in mid to large size markets. Where my husband comes into play is when I had graduated and I went to work at a station in Columbus. My husband was living, at the time fiance was living in West Virginia, and we thought, well, if we're going to get married, we should probably live in the same state. I was in a good position at that time that I could leave my current position and go on to get a master's. It was kind of a good timing for me because I was working nights, weekends, and every single holiday. So I was completely okay with saying, maybe I could do something a little bit different. Because going in at 3 a.m. when it's icing outside to tell everyone else not to go on the roads is not really that fun. So anyways, I moved to West Virginia. I started working at West Virginia University Hospitals in their marketing department, and I worked on my master's degree and focused a lot of research on mass communications, specifically relating it to psychological influences. So specifically, I looked at narcissism and created the first published research project that went through breaking down narcissism into 2 main constructs and how that actually influences our reactions on privacy control on social media. After I went to West Virginia, so it was a big deal that I was going to West Virginia. I didn't want to go to West Virginia. I love fishing, but other than that, there's just about nothing for me to do there. So the deal was, if I go to West Virginia and I live there for a few years and I get my master's degree, then we get to go wherever I want to go next. So we decided that we'd like to have a family, and mutually, my husband and I decided that we would move back to Northeast Ohio so that we could have a family near our family. Moved back to Northeast Ohio, ended up in the Hudson area because it was a perfect location for jobs to Cleveland or Akron, or if we really wanted to go back to Youngstown. Worked at a marketing agency. The reason that I went into working at a marketing agency was very specific. If I was going to make the transition from being a news producer, I wanted to apply all of those skills to public relations at an agency where I would actually be able to see multiple clients, where I would be able to apply those skills to learn as I was going, and actually get a feel for a wide variety of additional skill sets that I could add to my repertoire. So I wanted to start in an agency. Spent some time in the agency, handful of years, and then I was recruited into my current position I was recruited into a marketing manager position with the hope of being the director. So within a year, I was actually promoted to being the director of sales and marketing. So I'm not sure if anyone has ever heard of MCTV. I hadn't heard of it prior to being recruited into the position. What most people don't know about the cable and internet industry is that you've got a handful of big guys that everyone knows their names, and then you have more than 600 to 800 small to mid-sized providers throughout the U.S. We are considered a small to mid-sized provider, so if you look at those top 5 guys as being 1 through 5, and as you get higher in numbers, you get smaller, we're probably within the top 50. So we're actually a decently sized provider, but unless you're in our footprint, you're probably not going to have heard of us. We serve more than 50,000 homes. That number's continuously going up. We're in a big transition right now of extremely quick growth. We service Stark, Wayne, Summit, Holmes, Columbiana, and a slew of other Ohio counties, and we're continuing to edge out.
So do you actually service Hudson?
We do not. We don't come up this far. The farthest that we come up is up towards Green along along Arlington Road. So this is just a list of a couple of my responsibilities. So I'm not going to read this list to you. So we are a relatively smaller company. We have over 160 employees, but I wear a lot of hats in our company. So my title is director. I'm in an executive role within the company. I'm doing a lot of the strategy development, and I was specifically hired to come into the company and professionalize a lot of different departments. So prior to this, since we've always been a relatively small company, we did a lot of mom and pop work. But we know that there's a competitive atmosphere right now in the industry, and that our 5 and 10-year plan, we need to be cutting edge and not only cutting edge on technology, which we already were, but we also needed to make sure that we were professionalized within the company so that we could maintain a competitive edge against competitors that could be coming into our footprint. So the industry atmosphere, let's see my time, where am I? Got a couple more minutes. So the industry atmosphere, so right now the cable and television industry is changing now. With that said, it has been changing from day one. There is a new technology every day. I never go into work and have the exact same thing to be working on. I never have the same problem day to day because we are constantly improving, we're constantly advancing. So my company specifically in the small to mid-size provider realm is considered the leader in the industry. So a lot of people will come to me and they're asking, like other providers in Alaska or in Idaho are coming to me and saying, hey, how did you guys do this? What did you do with that? So we're kind of innovating, and we also train within. So we want to keep our workforce. So this is actually a very unusual thing, but at our company, it's not unusual to work for us for 40 or 50 years. Actually, also one of the challenges that we face is we have younger folks coming into our company that we need to train, but then we also have individuals who are in their 60s and 70s who've been with the company since high school, and we're blending all of these different age groups. So that's one of the challenges that we face to make sure that we're really helping everyone to continue to grow, educating them, and putting it back into our communities. Something that's really related to Rotary is ironic that our message that we have been sending out is that we're connecting what matters most. So that kind of ties in the fact that, one, we're connecting with Rotary, and it also kind of ties in the fact that I have 2 vocations, and I'm connecting what matters most. One, it's my vocation that's professional, and one, it's my vocation that's personal. Any questions? Okay.
All right, great job, Elizabeth. Wonderful. Our next presenter this morning, and then we'll have a question and answer for both of them, is Patrick Shearer. Patrick has been a Rotarian here in Hudson for a little over a year, and about a year and a half or so. And he's got deep Rotary roots, so he's a super valuable asset. He's jumped in and really helped out our club, so we're grateful to have Patrick with us as well. In June 16th, 2017, the Great Trail Council, through the Boy Scouts of America, appointed Patrick as the Scout Executive here locally. So he'll share a lot more about his responsibilities, I'm sure, but he's the top dog for Boy Scouts locally. It's awesome. Pat began his scouting career as a district executive at Bay Lakes Council in Appleton, Wisconsin. He moved on to become the camping director and later district director at Bay Lakes Council before getting promoted to development director of Cascade Pacific Council in Portland, Oregon. He was then named director of field service of San Francisco Bay Area Council in San Leandro, California, and has most recently been the scout executive of the Potawatomi Area Council in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Waukesha, Wisconsin.
Tom, how do you pronounce Wisconsin?
Pat is an Eagle Scout who enjoys hiking, sporting clays, and volunteering with his church and Rotary Club. He and his wife, Mara, have 2 children, Maya and Tyler. Please help us welcome Pat as he comes and gives us his vocational story this morning.
One thing that's a requirement, what was actually an interesting is at the time when I was getting ready to interview to be the first time to be a Scout executive or a CEO for a Boy Scout Council, I was working in California. And how the BSA has 3 different classifications of employees. We have our part-time seasonal employees, we have local council employees, and we have commissioned professional scouters. I myself am a commissioned professional scouter. So we move around the country providing the services to scouting all over the country. Local council employees stay local, and our seasonal employees are camp staff and those kind of employees. So when it came, the Scout executive job in Waukesha came available, the personnel director for the Western region called me and said, "Pat, we think you might be a good candidate for this job." And he goes, "What?" And he goes, "But the job is in And I said, "Waukesha?" And he said, "Yeah, and the council's name is Potawatomi." And he goes, "I think you're the only person in the Western region qualified for the job." So, needless to say, it was an opportunity. I grew up in Wisconsin, and my wife and I both went to a small Catholic college, St. Norbert College. And the only St. Norbert is consistently rated as one of those great liberal arts colleges in the Midwest. But its notoriety is Green Bay Packers do all their preseason. That's where they do their preseason training is at the campus at St. Norbert, and then they drive over to Lambeau Field and the practice fields over at Lambeau for their practices and those kind of things. So, and I can honestly say, one of the years when I was at St. Norbert, I stayed in the same dormitory that the Packers do, and I can tell you they take all of the stuff that the Packers get out of the dormitories before the students get there. So, probably giving you a little bit of a background, I wanted to give you how I got into working for the Boy Scouts. Is a very different path. I had no intention of going to work for the Boy Scouts. Even though I'm a product of the program, spent many a summer on summer camp staffs and all those kind of things, I was ready and raring to become an attorney. I thought I wanted to potentially go into politics, and I know that scares you, Andy, doesn't it? But I thought I wanted to become an attorney, but to the point of the year between the summer between my junior and senior year, I'd taken my LSATs. I'd been accepted to the University of Wisconsin Law School. I was ready and raring to become an attorney. Well, side note, one of the cool things about potentially if you go to the University of Wisconsin Law School or Marquette Law School and you're going to practice law in the state of Wisconsin, you don't have to take the bar. So that's a little inside Wisconsin. So that was another reason to stay at an in-state school to potentially go to law school. But needless to say, I'm going to a private college, and being the year between my junior and senior year, all of my money was gone. And our Scout executive at the time, I worked summer camp staff during the summer to put a little extra money in my pockets, and I was the business manager at our summer camp that summer. And every week, our Scout executive would come to camp, and he would sit across the desk from me and say, "We need you to join the professional service of the Boy Scouts of America." And I went, yeah, I got this plan. So finally, by week 5, where he had kept nagging me, and I said, "What do I need to do to get you to stop?" And he goes, "I need you to take this personality exam so that I can clear you to become a professional scouter." And I go, "Fine, well, we can do it next week when you come." I did the personality exam, came back, and of course, I matched up perfectly with what they were looking for candidates. I said, "That's great, but I'm going to law school. I want to be an attorney." My virus protection is expired. All right. They brought one of our computers from work. All right, so needless to say, I didn't have any money, and so he goes, "Well, what are you going to do for income for your senior year?" And I go, "I don't know. I haven't figured. Being a typical college student, I hadn't thought more than 60 days in advance." So I asked, and he goes, "Well, how about if you come to work for me part time?" And I said, "Oh, all right, that's good, because My first semester senior year was pretty heavy, but I intentionally left the second semester a little lighter to make that transition into going into law school and those kind of things. So yeah, I could probably do that starting the second semester. Well, I'm here to tell you I have now completed 28 years of working for the Boy Scouts of America, because I started on January 2nd 28 years ago, working for the Boy Scouts. Now, I jokingly tell you that until I became a Scout executive, I made more money working hourly for the Boy Scouts than I did when I became a salaried employee, because I got paid for every hour that I worked as opposed to being on a salary basis. But that's a kind of how I went into it. Why I stayed was I fell in love working with volunteers. Volunteers are the greatest force that the Boy Scouts and probably any nonprofit organization has into affecting their mission. Most nonprofits can't afford to hire staff to provide all the services that they provide to the clients that they serve. So the Great Trail Council, we serve just over 10,000 young people on an annual basis. We have about 5,000 adult volunteer mentors, and I have a full-time staff of 26. So if you had to take 26 staff and deploy that out over 10,000 kids, you couldn't do it. So we can't do what we do without our adult volunteers. Our council serves Medina, Summit, Portage, Trumbull, and Mahoning counties. So I jokingly say we're only 1 county tall, but we're 5 counties wide. Several of the things that continue today to potentially bring even a tear to my eye at times, and my son gives me a hard time about that. Going to an Eagle Scout ceremony, and I'm looking forward to going to Evan Nipp's Eagle Scout ceremony. Evan made Eagle right before the end of the year last year, so congratulations to Evan. But anytime I can go to one of those Eagle Scout ceremonies and see how that young person has what they've been able to achieve before they turned 18, how they've gone about organizing adults and scouts to do a project that serves their community, it reinvigorates me for what I do on an annual basis. In 2019, we had 253 Eagle Scouts. So across our council footprint, and if you think about it, on an average basis, an average Eagle Scout project does somewhere about 200 to 250 hours of community service. So if you magnify that 250 hours of community service times 253 Eagle Scouts across the council footprint, that's a lot of community service that's being done by 18 and younger young people and being led by that group. Scout camp invigorates me too, because that's kind of I call it our outdoor laboratory. Being in an area that's been known as the polymer capital of the world, our lab is out at Camp Manitowoc and Camp Butler. That's really where the scouting program comes alive. Nothing prepares a young person better to become a manager of other people once they graduate from college than having to be a patrol leader or a senior patrol leader. So if you can imagine being a 12-year-old and having to get other 10 and 11-year-olds to get together and work to make a meal, that's great preparation for being a manager and having to get them to work on a task at work. Everybody's going to have their opinions. Everybody's going to have the things that they're good at, things that they're not good at, and nobody ever wants to do the dishes. One of the things that's unique about my job is I get to recruit my boss. I work for our board, and my main supervisor is our council president. I get to recruit our council president. So there's not too many occupations where you actually get to go out and pick and secure your future boss. But that is one of the unique things about my current profession, about my profession. Not that I'm not looking to leave. Some of the hardships that are right now, obviously, Boy Scouts are in the news, not necessarily for a lot of positive things right now. Any youth serving agency isn't going to matter over the next 5 to 7 years is going to be going through what the Boy Scouts is going through. Because right, wrong, or indifferent, the rules that were in place in the 50s, 60s, and 70s are not the rules that are in place in the 2019s and the 2020s. our recollection of youth protection and what needs to take place to make sure our young people have a safe environment is entirely different. But we're held accountable by 2020 standards to what took place in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And as a movement, we're going through that right now. We certainly believe all of the victims of what took place, and we're horrified by what took place in the scouting program. By no means are we trying to cover anything up, but we're also we're in the process right now as an organization trying to figure out how do we take care of those that were victimized, but also be able to move forward so we can continue to serve young people for the next 100 years in the scouting program. One of the things that I enjoy the most, but I also like the most, is fundraising. I love making sure that scouts, young people get an opportunity to enjoy the scouting program. But our fundraising model, since I started in the Boy Scouts 28 years ago, has almost turned 180-degree turn. I remember starting as a district executive and having to go to United Way agency meetings because we received 75 to 80% of our operating income from the United Way. Today, the Great Trail Council receives about 2.5% of our operating income from the United Way. So we've had to in that 28-year period time frame, our fundraising model has had to change, and it needs to continue to change as we evolve through the programs. A couple things that I remember. The major from the Salvation Army here coming in and talking to us about some of the young people that they were serving in the Akron area and some of the heartbreaking stories that he'd witnessed in terms of, I get to see those same situations, I won't say on a weekly basis, but certainly on once or twice a month basis. Our council serves the cities of Akron, Warren, and Youngstown. Every time I think I can't see anything worse in the city of Akron, I get to go to Youngstown. And that's not an indictment of Youngstown. That's just the reality of the situation. When in the city of Youngstown, 53% of the young people live below the poverty line. And you think about it, the young people that are there, if you wanted to go by Maslow's hierarchy of needs, scouting's not anywhere close to what they need. They're looking for food, clothing, and shelter. And they're walking into some of the elementary schools in the Youngstown area. If you've read the book Brain Lapse, no, it's anarchy, where it's unbelievable. I'd never seen anything like that. Having worked in Oakland, California, I hadn't seen anything like that before. So those young people are screaming for it. They're screaming for attention. They're screaming for mentorship. They're screaming for adults to care. And that's heartbreaking to me that we can't serve those kids because those kids are looking for where their next meal is going to be coming from. What's the outlook for people being able to go to work in the nonprofit sector? One thing that is unique about the nonprofit sector is it's one of the fastest growing areas in our economy. Right now, the nonprofit sector accounts for about 20% of our council's gross domestic product. So if you think about that, the amount of payroll and those kind of things that the nonprofit sector provides to our local economies is pretty significant. Last year, we moved our council service center from Akron to Stowe, and we're now at 4500 Hudson Drive. I was shocked when the economic development director for the city of Stowe came and said, we want to talk to you about your income taxes for your salaries, new employees, because we might be able to get you a rebate. And I go, now, this was all new to me because I haven't been an Ohio resident all that long. But that's when I really began to understand the economic impact of what the nonprofit sector gives back to the local economies. If I was going to advise a young person about what to get into, if they wanted to get into the nonprofit sector, certainly wouldn't be getting a political science degree like I got. I would not advise a political science degree. I would tell them to make sure if you wanted to go into, is to get some education in finance and administration. My career path prior to becoming an executive director, my main things that I was judged on was how many kids we had in the program, what kind of programs we were putting on. Do we have enough were we recruiting enough adults into the program? Were we training those adults? suddenly I became an executive director, and I wasn't doing any of those things anymore. I was fundraising. I was having to look at financials. I was having to look at balance sheets. I was having to look at depreciation. I was having to build things, all different kinds of things that I had never done before. So I would highly encourage young people to make sure you do that. I would also encourage them to get involved in a social organization in college, whether that's a fraternity or an independent organization that does community service, that has that as a big, one of the things I look for as I look for potential employees is our college graduates that have that, because they understand how service is done, and recruiting of volunteers and having to delegate things to volunteers and having to work through volunteers in order to be able to get things done. I was asked to speak a little bit about technology and how that's evolving through the scouting program. Those of that are volunteers in scouting would say we're not evolving fast enough. But in that 28-year time frame that I've worked for the Boy Scouts, all of our training was done in person, where people would have to come to a session and we would teach a session on how to be a Cub Scout leader or how to be a Scout leader. All of that today is done online. It's all online. It's all done online learning. So you can do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can be trained as an adult leader. I'm on a task force right now, and I know, and anybody who's currently a Scout leader, this is going to be sacrilege, is the Scout handbook eventually is going to be on this device. Because if you think about where our youth are today, very rarely do they ever open a textbook. They're using their Chromebooks, they're using their devices to get their information. And if you think about it, if you're trying to identify what a plant is, wouldn't it be kind of cool to be able to take a picture of it with your phone, and your phone actually tells you what kind of plant that is and what the uses for that kind of plant are, versus having to potentially pick the plant and bring it back to be able to identify what it is and those kind of things. So we're in the process of, we probably will never get rid of the printed handbooks, because one of the things that's unique about scouting is we currently have 5 different generations participating in the program. All 5 generations have a different preference for how they communicate, and they don't communicate amongst themselves. If I want to punish my 18-year-old, I make him call somebody on the phone and carry on a conversation of more than 30 seconds. So part of one of our greatest challenges is making sure we can communicate with all 5 of those generations in the way that they receive and in which they receive information. Environmentally, I double checked on this. We're actually the only Scout council in the country where all of our camp properties are actually on city water. So Camp Manitowoc and Camp Butler and Camp Stambaugh, all three of our camps, actually Manitowoc and Butler, we pay our water bill to the city of Hudson quarterly, and I gasp when I see how much water kids consume, especially in the summer when they're showering. Well, some of them are showering. That's what the pool's for, right? But we're on city water. We're actually in a joint partnership with the National Park Service for our sewer system at camp. So we actually partner with the National Park Service on that. One thing that's unique too, both of our properties have conservation easements over them. So we could never ever sell Camp Manitowoc or Camp Butler, because we have a conservation easement with the National Park Service saying that if it's ever not a Scout camp, it becomes national park land. So there's absolutely no financial benefit for us to potentially ever serve that, or ever sell that camp property, nor would we ever want to. And the last thing is, if you ever are interested in knowing more about latrines, I can spend hours explaining to you Ohio Department of Natural Resources qualifications for what is a latrine and what is called a comfort station. There's actually a difference. If you've been in the national parks and seen those nice big brick buildings that have individual doors and goes, that is a comfort station. That is not a latrine. A latrine are the wooden ones that are that kind of have that's considered an outhouse is a latrine. And the difference between building a latrine, which you can't probably build anymore anywhere in the state of Ohio, and a comfort station costs about $50,000 to build. So if you have 30 of those on a camp property and you have to begin the process of replacing all of those, that becomes a significant financial hardship to begin the process of doing that. So not to end with the latrines, but I think that's a good place to bring Elizabeth up, and we'll answer some questions.
So, Pat, let me ask the first question, if I may. I don't know if this is a question or what, but I got a chance to visit Pat in their new headquarters on Hudson Drive, by the way. I would assume Pat would be happy to host any of you to come and see his new facility. It's rather Spartan, but very nice, and is going to work out great, I think. You guys used to be in South Akron on the south side.
1601 South Main Street. So the new Bridgestone building, we were neighbors right to the Bridgestone, and kitty corner from, if anybody knows where the professional softball field was in Akron, we were right down in that on Firestone and Main Street. We sold it on the 27th of December. Thank you very much. Thank you. So that building's gone. So yes.
But anyway, when I was visiting him, I was asking him a little bit about what their funding priorities were, and he was telling me about. We were talking about girls coming to scouting and everything, and that's wonderful. And you're expecting a big influx of girls at that time, and I think that's proving out from what I think I heard. But as he mentioned, that puts challenges on their camping facilities.
Mike's not on.
Oh, it's not on? I'm sorry.
Or died.
That's putting some challenges on their facilities at the campgrounds because they have to have now comfort stations, I guess, for all these girls.
We need individualized restroom facilities.
So he has a list of all these different priorities that they have, all these different capital priorities, and the last one I think was latrine, or excuse me, was comfort stations, right. and there were naming opportunities for the for the donors for. So I wanted to suggest a Rich Warfield comfort station. Dad, you going to be the first contributor to that? All right. Let's see. Let me get this over here.
Liz, I can't let you leave without my number one question to your business, streaming. Because I cut the cord myself, and I can see the turmoil that causes your future. What do you foresee how you're going to respond to that?
Sure. So our industry started in cable in the 60s, but it's evolved to being more about internet. So we really push internet. Internet's where everything is. It's where the future is going. So that's really our main focus. With that said, and this is my personal belief, is that everything is cyclical. What you're starting to see now is in the New York Times and in Wall Street Journal, there's been a couple articles about how wouldn't it be so great if everything was in one place instead of having all of these different streaming services? There's a service for that. It's called cable. So I personally think that some of it is cyclical. It will always evolve. It will never go back to being the original traditional coax cable that we had in the 60s. But it has evolved, and it will continue to evolve. It's a problem that it's a problem, but it's also a benefit within our industry that has been happening from day one. I mean, everything is constantly changing. Like I couldn't even start to tell you how many changes happen because it literally constantly changes. I mean, we just rebuilt our entire system with direct fiber, and the technology is already changing. Now, direct fiber is a little more future-proof than most technologies, but yeah, that's sort of how I feel. Does that answer your question?
Actually, sort of a follow-up question. For both cable and internet, I'm just curious, how do you measure your audience?
How do we measure our audience, and in what way?
Like how many people are viewing? Or
So typically the industry measures based by homes passed. So whenever we're building out. So one of the questions kind of similar to this is, well, how come there's not competition? What's the whole monopoly idea? Without getting too far into the weeds, one of the other challenges that we have as a industry is that we have a very undereducated consumer, not by anyone's fault. But people just don't understand how it works. Mm-hmm. The reason that it doesn't seem like there is a lot of competition is, one, competition isn't exactly parallel. So the streaming services and all of those are competition for us. With that said, it is really, really, really expensive to build the infrastructure. So if one provider has the infrastructure built and they've captured those customers, the rate of turning over those customers from one provider to another provider is really, really hard. You're looking at like single-digit turnover percentages. So actually going in and building over a large provider that has already captured all of those homes passed or customers, what's the point? you'd spend so much in trying to market to them and trying to get them to turn over, because what's also funny in the industry is everyone hates their cable provider. I don't disagree with you. But nobody actually wants to change when it comes down to taking the day off of work and actually making the transition and going through the rigmarole that goes into changing to a new provider. Everyone just wants to complain about it. And I'm there with you guys.
I have a question for Pat. You know, having two boys that were scouts, I think a lot of us take for granted the amazing facilities that we have literally in our backyard. And with your national experience, you could probably speak to that. But I think many of us would be shocked at what your budget is for that, for the scouts in the area. So if you could speak to both of those, that'd be great.
Sure. So our council operating budget is $3.5 million. So with that, of that $3.5 million of that comes in camping revenue. So in a summer or on an annual basis, we'll have more than 40,000 nights of camping. So if we were a hotel, we would say we have 40,000 rooms booked on an annual basis. Now, depending upon the time of the year, as it's starting to snow outside right now, most of that's in cabin camping, but in the summer season, a good portion of that is tent camping. We are blessed in the Great Trail Council and in Northeast Ohio to have the only Boy Scout camp that is entirely surrounded by a national park. So all of our borders around Camp Manitowoc and Camp Butler are national park land. So we have the great opportunity is our camp footprint is really the entire national park. So if as scout groups they can stay and spend their night at Camp Manitowoc and be off hiking into the national park in minutes. So we have that is an extreme benefit to us. But we certainly do it on a shoestring budget. There's a couple of key donors. We roof approximately 13 to 14 buildings a year. So we have that many that by the time we're through doing all of them, we need to start over again. So on a 15 to 20 year cycle, we're doing that many roofs on an annual basis. So I have an annual donation of a semi-load of shingles that comes into camp. My camp ranger looks at that semi as he's unloading it and realizing that is the next several years of buildings that he'll be responsible for getting volunteers primarily to come out and shingle those buildings for us at camp.
All right, last question. Tom told me I get that much time. In 20 seconds or less. What's the future of your company, Liz, being a small to mid-size advertising, marketing company, whatever, or television company or whatever, media company? And then with respect to the Boy Scouts, what happened to the land adjacent to Camp Manitowoc with the golf course? In 20 seconds or less.
My company is not going anywhere. A lot of small providers have been bought up by larger providers. A lot of larger providers have been merging with other larger providers. But we have no intention of going anywhere. We're family owned by a local family, and we care about putting money back into the community and back into the state. So that's not necessarily about making tons and tons of money, but it's making a profit enough that we can put that back into the communities.
The golf course has been bought by the Nature Conservancy, and they're in the process of negotiation with the National Park Service and with the Summit County Park System on who's going to take over ownership and management of that property. No decision's been made on that. We were asked to if we would be in support of that, and we certainly are, because we actually have 2 dams on our property where we make our lakes. And if there was ever a dam breach, that area would have water. So we did not want any commercial or residential development in that area in case that potentially would ever happen. So